Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/Wisdom of the Sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Shama Ashram in Cali, Colombia, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the world of dented cans. Kaustubha, I got one for you. We say this dented cans. We say, we're all sort of a little broken. We're a little broken in this world. You don't have to beat yourself up for being broken. You like this one? We're all in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars.
The Pretenders. I know that one.
No, we're all in the gutter, but some of us are looking up. Some of us are looking at the stars. So here we are.
Pretenders. That's lyrics from the Pretenders. Are you
aware?
Is it? Yes.
I thought it was. I think it's from.
She may have taken it from somewhere else. I think
she took it from. Who's my guy? Who wrote the Portrait of Dorian? Oscar Wilde.
Oh, maybe.
It's Oscar Wilde. Yeah.
She's a devotee, by the way. You know that, Chrissy.
Chrissy Hind? Well,
yeah.
Yeah, Chrissy Hind is a devotee.
Yeah.
Let's get her on the show. I think
tried.
we tried at the very beginning. She shut us down hard.
I think she left the door open, not right now, but maybe later. So maybe we should reach out.
Well, it's time for that second phone call. Hi, Chrissy. It's Raghunath. I was thinking about everyone has like a material bucket list. Like, I want to go to Aruba. Some like bucket list. We should have a spiritual bucket list. Do you have one? Places you want to go, things you want to do spiritually. Mara, well, I'm asking Kaustubha. You got to think of your spiritual bucket list, Mara.
Oh, I got to think. Maybe Mara can go first.
Oh, I'm still thinking on that too.
I'll start this one. I want to do Char Dham. So there's India has Char Dham also. Badrinath, Setu Banda, Puri, and Dwarka. That Char Dham I'd like to do, but there's Char Dham in the Himalayas. Like Haridwar is the gateway up to the Himalayas. And from there's Gangotri, source of the Ganga, Yamunotri, source of the Yamuna on earth. We say on earth because it's coming from somewhere else. Kedarnath, abode of Lord Shiva, and Badrinath. I want to do Char Dham on a motorcycle. That's my spiritual bucket list. The motorcycle is just sort of a twist, but yeah. And I think it's nice. And because in the material world, people make these bucket lists in their mind. They're like working towards them. I want to go to Paris, or I want to go to, whatever, Rome. Spiritual. It could even be, while I'm setting up the computer today, they're having a morning program at Shama Ashram. And, I like to go and offer my obeisances there, but I have to set up my computer. So I don't have much time to look at what they're doing. And I have to get my show on the road. But I tell you, I miss just hearing that morning program of a temple on a regular basis. And if you've never been to like a Krishna temple morning program, put that on your bucket list. If you've never sat for a day and given a day to, I'm going to chant 16 rounds. Like some people chant regularly one round a day and they feel like very connected with that. Do a day on your bucket list where you chant 16 and see how that feels. And what happens with this type of bucket, see, a material bucket list, what happens is you get something very high, like, we did it. We went to Belize or something like that, where it's like a material bucket list. It's a great place. You swam with that great, you saw a hammerhead shark, something like that. And then it's over and sort of like, yeah. But what happens with the spiritual bucket list, and it's maybe not something super exotic, but you get that feeling, you get a deep feeling and you're like, wow, I want that feeling back. I want to get, and that it makes you chase that feeling, and you just want to keep going there. How can I get back there again? So if you've never been to a morning program where you hear and you sing those songs, very special. If you never chanted 16 rounds, very special. If you never got on a motorcycle and went to Char Dham in the Himalayas, very special. That's my spiritual bucket list. What do you think?
About going to Char Dham? I think it's a great idea that you.
No, and I'm thinking, do you have a spiritual bucket list, or maybe you never thought of it like that, and I think you've probably done a lot of your spiritual bucket lists already.
I don't think of it like a bucket list. There are places I'd like to go that I've never been. That's for sure.
I'd like to spend a month in Jagannath Puri.
Okay.
Month in Jagannath Puri. Mm-hmm. Because Lord Chaitanya lived there, and there's so many great pastimes that went there. I really want to. I say own. That's such a. I want to really learn all those pastimes in and out. But on our pilgrimage this year in November, we're going. Taking a group on pilgrimage November 3rd through the 16th. We're going to Puri.
Okay.
Mary, you got anything you want to? You got a bucket list?
Yeah, I have so many places I haven't been that Puri is definitely on my bucket list. Tirupati. I've always wanted to go there.
People. Climb the hills. Kaustubha told that story the other day.
Yeah, I've heard Kaustubha and Gita Priya talk about it a lot, and I'd like to go there sometime.
It's Tirupati's got that long line. You're waiting in the long line to see the Lord. And I remember bragging to Raghunath Swami, never brag to the guru. Never. It doesn't work out well. But I was like, hey, Maharaj, I got in the short line. There's like a VIP line that Radhakund snuck us in. We got in the short line. I was like, Maharaj, you don't believe it. We went to go see Balaji and Tirupati. I got in the short line. And he goes, I always choose the long line. And I was like, why? He's like, because in that wait, it's an 8 hour, right? Kaustubha, 8 hour wait.
Well, it all depends. It could be actually days, It
could be days. So you're standing in that line. My day, it was like an 8 hour wait. And so I was like, I missed that whole 8 hour wait. I got to the top front of the line. He still had to wait like an hour, but it was still, yeah. He said, I like to wait because it builds deep anticipation. So when you have that darshan, you are fully present. But I remember I was with Radhakund, and the line is almost like, if you go to a carnival or at the airport where you're waiting in that line with zigzags back and forth, Disneyland or something. It's like that to see the deities. It's zigzagging back and forth. And every turn is sort of like a little different facet of the inner portion of the temple. So at one point you're looking at a carved wall. At another point you're looking at an old bookcase. At another point you're looking at another carved wall. And it's sort of even interesting because you're inside like this temple area. But I remember by the time we got to the temple and having darshan, we were still like looking around. We don't even realize we're actually having darshan. And Radhakund is standing there. He's like this big elder brahmachari. And he's like yelling at me, what are you doing? Why are you looking around? See the Lord! See the Lord! Because you only have like a moment and then they just sort of like whisk you away.
Yeah.
So I feel like in that moment, I have to do a do-over at Tirupati as well.
Let's do that. Climb the hill.
Yeah.
Bathe in the tank.
Bathe in the tank.
Mm-hmm.
You want to tell the Tirupati story, Kaustubha? That's a good story.
Which one?
The baby. The baby. The baby in the hundi. Come on.
No. We're running late. We can do it. That one's too esoteric. It's like it'll freak people out.
I don't know. I think it's like a Krishna miracle.
I mean, it does end in the Krishna miracle. It's true.
Come on. Tell the story.
All right. So this is a story I've heard. I mean, I can't absolutely verify that this is true, but
let's just say it's true. Let's just say it's true. Whenever something's unverifiable, I just say I was there.
Yeah.
I make it more verifiable by saying I witnessed it. because
it
I
is
feel
just-
like the principle is the same.
Yeah, the principle. This is the important thing. Okay, so there was a young family, like a husband and wife with a infant, I believe, or a young child. Maybe not an infant, but
She was very, very sweet, this lady.
yes, when you knew her, right? And so they went. You go to Tirupati. As Raghunath saying, you wait in a long line, and you when you're inside that when you after you've had the darshan, after you've had that like just a few moments to see this ancient form of Lord Vishnu, you are kind of whisked out of that really within seconds for most people, right? Because there's so many thousands. It's the most visited place on earth, right?
Really?
More than the Vatican. Yes, yeah. More than the Vatican, more than any other place. Not even just religious place or something like that, but it's as far as I understand, it's the most visited place, And so you moved along quite quickly, and then you come out, and when you come out, you can kind of wander around that larger temple area and the courtyard and so on, and but and it takes you past a hundi, which is like a donation box. People leave a donation for the temple, and just
like a big donation box,
Well, it's not even a box. I'll describe it in a second, but just to give people an idea that this temple is nobody knows how many centuries it goes back. And it was common in India, like, centuries ago, that it would be someone's bucket list that I want to go see Lord Vishnu in Tirupati. And even if it meant walking for hundreds of miles, it was something that you did in your life, So I might walk for a month to go before there were trains and planes and cars and all of that. People would go on pilgrimages like that and walk for a month, to go see, even if it was just one time in my life. People would commonly shave their head, and they still do shave their head when they offer their hair, right? And it's actually where the majority of the wigs in the world come from.
Oh, they actually really offer their hair. I thought you meant like they're offering it as take my hair and throw it in the river, but they're actually saying they cut off their hair and donate it.
Actually, it's ladies included, right? They shave their head, and so you come out and you get to this hundi. And most if you go to most temples, like a hundi is like a box, but there it's like this big cloth, like a canvas, kind of like hourglass kind of canvas thing that's quite tall. Like you have to reach up to leave your donation in there. And sometimes parents, when they want to give a donation, they give it to the child, and the child will drop it in the hundi, so like the child gets some credit.
That's adorable.
Isn't that sweet? Okay.
It's adorable until
So this family, they held up their child, and the child was reaching to drop it in, and they dropped the child into the hundi.
They dropped the child in it gets better than that, Sherry. Sherry Sutton's like, oh, they dropped the child. Oh, no, you don't understand.
Yeah. So now the child is deep in there. You can't get to it, because it's quite, it's a deep thing.
It's deep.
And so they went and they got the temple priest. And the temple priest explained. I imagine they got the child out, but then the temple priest explained. This is the tradition that's gone back so many centuries here. When you give a donation to the Lord, you've given the donation, and you've given your child. And so, the right thing to do would be, now that you offer your child, we would raise this child here. But it's really inauspicious to take the child. But now that you've offered your child to God, to take it back,
all the mothers are freaking out here. All the guys are like, yeah, I could understand that. That makes legitimate sense.
So, but this I know to most Western ears and minds, this would sound shocking and absurd and wild, but you really have to put yourself in a different place to understand the sentiments that someone might consider in this. And this family, they thought very deeply about it. If you were raised in a completely different mindset, where your idea was, yes, my body, my mind, my family, my wealth, my everything is meant to be an offering to God, and that's where the deepest happiness is found, and so on. If you were raised hearing these kind of stories and seeing these kind of examples, then even when you're put in this extreme example, you might consider it in a very different way. And because
it is like part of the culture is sometimes there are, children, sometimes poor children or something like that, where the parents can't take care of their kids. They give their children to sadhus to raise.
Yes.
And they're raised like in a monastery, even like Bihar School of Yoga. The leader of the Bihar School of Yoga, which is one of those traditions, it's a big yoga school, especially like in Australia. But the leader of that school was raised by Satyananda. He was given to the yoga school at age 4 or something. He was raised to be the next
unusual.
Charya. Yeah. It's not that. Thank you. It's not that unusual.
So
go on.
So these parents, they agreed. They said, okay, I guess this is meant to be, that our child will be raised as a devotee, perhaps as a monk, as a devotee of God, and obviously we can imagine it must have been quite a heartrending kind of thing. And so then that child would stay there to be raised, as a devotee. And then, this is the more shocking part of the story. As the parents were driving home, on their way home, they were in a car accident and the parents died, in some kind of horrible accident. So it's likely that that child would have died. But
there we
his
go.
arms go up in the
there we go.
Krishna miracle mudra.
It's a Krishna miracle.
Yeah. So anyway, that is a story I've heard, relatively widely, So in any case, Tirupati, Mara.
Tirupati.
Yeah,
that's good.
You should donate some
children.
No,
children.
I was thinking,
I should donate some children. I'm going there with my kids.
I was thinking some of your vegan
Don't
sushi.
tell
them
the story until the end.
I was thinking some of your vegan sushi, but if you want to have a kid and donate it, that could be done too. All right,
let's dive into the Srimad Bhagavatam.
No, go ahead.
You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam mudirayet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshva badreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naistaki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service to the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Midatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances to my spiritual masters who have opened my eyes, which were blinded by the darkness of ignorance, with the ointment of knowledge.
You know what that reminded me of, Raghu?
What?
That story is the orphanage, that's connected with the Chaupati temple, and now there's Govardhan Eco Village,
You got another good story about the
orphanage? Not a story. I mean, there are stories. I've heard them, but I can't really remember them in detail. But that place that is now the Chaupati temple, Radhanath Swami. The Radhanath Swami is pretty much established.
Sure.
In Mumbai. That the building, originally they just had like one little room in this larger complex, which was the majority of that complex was an orphanage. I think it's called the Tinkerbell Children's Orphanage.
Tinkerbell
Children.
Yes.
Right? And also on that property is a little, to this day, is a little Lakshmi Narayan, Vishnu temple that Gandhi hid in, right, when he was being kind of hunted down by the government.
I never heard that twist of the story.
Oh, yeah. You never heard that?
Gandhi hid in the Lakshmi Narayan temple, taking shelter of Lord Vishnu. Hey.
Yeah.
Literally.
And also, BKS Iyengar had his studio there, too.
BKS Iyengar hid there also?
No, he taught yoga there.
Oh, he taught you, okay.
Yeah. Did you ever go there when there was the big orphanage there, like the whole thing in the school?
I didn't. The first time I went to that temple in Chaupati was 2003.
Oh, okay, quite late. Really, that late? Yeah. Okay, I was there, I think, in '96. It was beautiful, and Maharaj would come and all the kids would be out. It was nice, and they would all.
1997 was the first time I went there, but I don't remember that.
Yeah, I remember when it was just, on that property, there was all kind of things going on. It wasn't just the temple. There was all kind of things. And then, now they made it all a sense. It was just kind of a box, and now it's, but in any case, that orphanage was there, and when gradually the devotees got more and more of that property until now they've got the entire property. But part of that included taking responsibility for taking over the care of the orphanage. And so they did that, and now those now they kind of moved that to the Govardhan Eco Village, which was a beautiful place to grow up.
I know for an orphan to grow up at the Govardhan Eco Village is
for anyone. But my point was that there are a lot of beautiful stories, of real success stories, of children that
coming
were,
out of there.
because in Mumbai, it's not just you're a poor orphan. You're not just poor. You're like the poorest of the poor.
Right.
And so a lot of those kids, there's a lot of beautiful stories of kids that were raised in that orphanage, and
Well, I think it was
gone on
last
to
year.
do wonderful things.
We were having our teacher training, and I saw like a group of, like, I thought it was because it's the Govardhan Eco Village is one of these places where people come and they come together with groups of, sometimes executives will come or something like that. So I saw a group of like it appeared like executives or something like that. And I was like, what are they doing? Some thing for business or hosting these people? They said, no. These are all graduates of the orphanage.
Yeah.
They're coming back. They're coming back for a reunion or something.
Yeah.
And they were all like stellar individuals, bowing down, embracing, but they looked very successful. It was very impressive.
Yeah, because they're raised in such a special atmosphere with such care and such. I mean, imagine the examples that you grow up with. If you grew up in that orphanage, like, Gauranga Prabhu, Govinda Prabhu, Radhanath Swami. It's just like these, just like stellar individuals,
Yeah, it's
And
like having an incredible father with incredible
Yeah.
uncles and incredible aunties and
people like Krishna Chandra, people, just a whole wide range of amazing examples, and really caring, loving people, deeply spiritual people, deeply moral people. It would. So when we think of that child being dropped in that basket, and and the parents saying, okay, we'll leave the child here, you have to kind of see it in this kind of context too, that that the child be raised in a very special way.
we're still trying to normalize that for everybody out there. It's very normal. It's a good thing.
It's a good thing.
It's a good thing. Well, I think the principle here is when you add Krishna to your life, things become even auspicious. Be it getting dropped in a basket,
I like that.
like being dropped in a basket, or even like being an orphan in a very poor country. That's a problematic thing. You had Krishna in your life, it becomes auspicious. And now how can you put that in your life wherever you're at today? Adding Krishna to my life, how will it become auspicious? I can think of a million ways my life has become auspicious since I've added Krishna to my life. Thank you, Krishna.
Great.
That's a great little motto today.
Cheers.
Thank you, Krishna.
Okay. All right. So should we pick up where we were yesterday?
Yeah, we were in a cool place.
You sound disappointed almost. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't mean it like that.
All right.
I meant just like, sorry. We are in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3.
Yeah. We read text 1 through 6 yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
Right. But we touched on these 9 stages of bhakti. Right.
Yeah, and that's
Do you
where
remember that?
Yeah, that's where we sort of left off. I can't remember. We
began to discuss them. So let's go ahead and read through them. All right.
Sure.
And these are, I mean, I don't know if the origin, but I believe it may be the origin where these are mentioned. I'm not sure, but certainly it's there in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the biography of Sri Chaitanya, where he instructs these to Rupa Goswami, his very important follower, who went on to write really important books and establish an important temple in Vrindavan, and just a real leader of the bhakti movement.
Don't make me tell that story, because that's a Krishna miracle.
I don't know what you're talking about. About the Govindaji temple or something?
The Govindaji.
Oh, the cow and all
the
that.
cow, the milking cow, the buried deity, milking the deity, burying the cow.
Yeah, let's hold on that.
We'll hold with that one, but
okay.
I'm going to come to it, depending.
So
these people start banging on the walls here. I'm going to have to share it.
So here are the 9 stages. And this is real important, because let's take our spiritual life, and let's not, we can speak of spirituality in very vague terms, but these great teachers, sometimes they'll break it down into very systematic kind of presentations, And that's what we get when we get these 9 stages, and one can begin to understand, where am I in these 9 stages, and where do I need to get, So they begin with Shraddha, faith, Then the next is Saru-Sanga, the association of devotees. Then bhajana kriya. So that means, it's defined in different ways. Literally, bhajana means one's worship, and kriya means like a purification process, you could say, right? So, like there are the different yoga kriyas, right? Like neti and things like that, where you clean out your nose by pouring water in one nostril and out the other. You do that regularly, Raghu?
I blow my nose on a regular basis.
Seems like the kind of thing
Does
you
that
get
count
into.
for something? I use ear candles. Does that something? Is that
It's
a kriya?
actually, it's a really good practice, especially like if you're like me, like you live in the city or on the subways in the winter, and you get germs lodging. You just pour that water right through, the little salt water,
Right through the nostrils. It's
right
great.
in one side, out the other. It sounds really weird, but it's really easy to do. Okay. Then, so bhajana kriya means, really it indicates that one says, I'm going to begin to regulate my life and begin to regulate my spiritual practices under the guidance of someone that's, well established at this. And so it's like taking up the practice seriously, bhajana kriya. And then a very important stage, which maybe we should discuss in detail today, anartha nivritti.
Anartha nivritti, the unwanted, getting rid of the
Yeah.
unwanted stuff in the heart.
That's right.
Right?
Artha
It's sort of
means
like-
something valuable. So anartha means something that's not valuable. And nivritti means, negating it or decreasing it. So anartha nivritti.
Interesting side note on that. It's sort of like you clog up your drain. Happens. Clog up your drain in the
That
kitchen
metaphor,
sink.
Okay.
It's not just that the drain is clogged. It's that the more stuff you're putting in on top of that just becomes even more disgusting. The sink becomes grosser and grosser and grosser. You got to unclog the drain. So if we don't practice these habits of getting rid of envy in the heart and resentment in the heart and fault finding in the heart, then the more we add and our more life experience we have, the whole thing just becomes more and more toxic, and we have layers and layers of stuff as we grow older we have to undo, and we're just like contaminating that sink more and more and more. So yeah.
Okay, so that's anartha nivritti, and we'll come back to this. And if one can overcome all these kind of, and again we'll discuss them, but one can reach a stage called nishta, which means steadiness. Now, if you meet a Bhakti-yogi that's on the stage, this person's going to be very impressive, right?
Nishta, yeah.
Steadiness. I'm fixed. I'm not distracted by things. I'm not, confused, or I don't waste my time. I'm fixed, in the state of consciousness. It's called, nishta means like steadiness or being fixed. Okay. Then comes ruchi.
Ruchi, I like that. I want to get to ruchi just for the name of it. Yeah, ruchi. It sounds fun.
Ruchi. So ruchi means taste. It means now that these activities that I was doing in bhajana kriya without deep taste, chanting japa every day, right? Meditating on mantra, kirtan, hearing Bhagavatam, these things. Now when I do them, I relish them like intensely, like, they're incredibly satisfying. And then comes ashakti, which means it's translated different ways. It can be attachment, but it indicates a stage where one's almost addicted to that taste now, right? It's yeah, and then after that comes what's called the sprout of love of God, bhava, which we discussed a bit yesterday, right? It means prema, and the final stage is prema, pure love of God. And so these 9 stages is kind of a deepening, as with each one, growing and growing. It's, in one sense, it's that initial faith or that initial experience that one has that gives one some faith that this is special, right? I've met some people, I've heard some teachings, I've engaged in some type of worship maybe. This is real special. I especially, I've met someone who's deep in this, and I want to be like that, That's shraddha, one gets some faith. And that leads to the desire that I need to spend time with people that are deep in this, and that's Saru-Sanga. And then one takes up that practice seriously. They begin bhajana kriya. Now, those practices, and we've discussed this before, that the faith in even in the broader yoga tradition, is that there's spiritual substance that I can absorb my mind in and become transformed. My mind is, a mess of, if my mind is a computer, it's got all kind of viruses. It's got all kind of, corrupted files, and it's just not operating well.
Like that. Like
It's got
that
a lot of,
analogy.
it's got a lot of false information. In my mind, just through all my experience, has been convinced that I'm going to find happiness in this. I'm going to find happiness in that. We're really, happiness is this internal state that needs to be uncovered. And so we begin to chase that happiness in different ways. Sometimes we do things that are cruel. Sometimes we do things that are selfish. Sometimes we're, because we've got this false information in the computer that's making us run after it and run after it. And it just gets worse and worse. And then before you know it, it's just like sometimes, if someone's visiting websites that are full of malware, right?
Malware.
Yeah. And,
Mare's like,
sometimes
malware.
they have these, like websites that like you can see stuff for free, like whether it's sports or movies or things like that. They kind of get you there, but then they just infect your computer with malware.
Yeah.
And the more that you do that, the more that your computer is just really getting corrupted by these files. That's our life in the material world, or lifetime after lifetime, corrupting the files within the mind. And so that has us our mind full of all these anarthas, unwanted things. And when you have that mind that's corrupted with all these, corrupted files, the taste for these practices in Bhajana Kriya, the taste for sitting down alone with a mala of beads, with like a rosary of beads, sitting alone in a quiet place and chanting a mantra. For someone who hasn't passed through Anartha Nivritti, it may not be the most exciting, dynamic experience. It may even feel tedious to them, right? But to someone who's come out the other side of Anartha Nivritti, who's purified those files on the mind, when they chant that mantra, they begin to feel something really special. And when you get to those higher stages, that's what, because all this is coming out in relation to what we read about Uddhava yesterday, right? That Uddhava, that Vidura said, please tell me about Krishna. And just hearing that name, it feelings arose in his very soft heart that were so powerful and deep that he was stunned. And for a muhurta, for 48 minutes or so, he was just in another world,
Sure.
experiencing the deepest yogic ecstasies. Then he came out of that and began to speak. So for someone who's on those higher stages, on these 9 levels, what is maybe boring or tedious or not fully satisfying on those early stages becomes the deepest, they ignite the deepest feelings of happiness within.
It is not, I was thinking, not only will they not have attraction to it, but even if they have that attraction to the chanting the holy name or sitting in quiet and chanting, unless they've gone through that process where they're really working on eliminating those toxins from the heart, they'll never really get a strong. We don't want the strong taste at the cost of like offending people, offending devotees, not being kind, still having resentment, not being sensitive to other people's feelings, or that it will be a very, very short flash in the pan of like, yeah, I'm very renounced, I'm very attached to chanting. Krishna won't allow it to go on. It's like a practice of also not just my endeavor, but of getting the mercy of Krishna. It's Krishna that actually gives us the taste to chant. And if we want to continue that for a long time, it's the way we behave within a community of other people practicing that makes that taste even stronger. Or eventually you'll get very serious and then people just go away from their serious, because what happens is that taste gets withdrawn. So it's not just from like an excitement of I'm really into this, I'm really sincere about this. That can also be based on like ego. I mean, we've seen that happen, I think, with our own, I can speak for myself, with our very new to bhakti, I get into it and I get excited. A lot of times people in the mode of passion and in a mood of super excitement, I want to take vows for my entire life, or I want to become a monk my entire life. And you're 22 years old, you're like, that's not going to be a problem whatsoever. And then if you like zoom out of your entire life, you're like, what was I thinking? I was like, that was a lot to take on. And so I think it's like important to realize that the idea of even chanting alone and to get to that place, it takes a lot to actually get to that place. It's like hard work. And a lot of it's just like sort of like programming ourselves of how to just be a kind human being again. Because like we were started the show with, we're dented cans, we're living in the gutter and looking at the stars. And it's becoming a sensitive human again. And
well, there's a book, Madhurya Kandambini, that was written by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, a really important saint and writer in the Bhakti tradition. And that book largely, is kind of laying out these 9 different stages of advancement in Bhakti Yoga. And he identifies, when he speaks about anartha nivritti, he identifies that there are 4 types of anarthas that are recognized according to their origins, what they spring from. And what you're speaking about is one of, especially one of them. But it says that these are the 4 types of anarthas: unwanted things, corruptions, corrupted files, different categories of corrupted files in our computer of our mind, or within our heart, we could say. So one are anarthas that arise from previous bad karma, from previous behavior, negative behavior. Right.
Which could have come from a previous life. We come into this world and we have proclivities to do criminal things or dark things, evil things. So like we just have this proclivity to be nasty, and we become born in a family where those things are like maybe even normalized. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's an anartha that once you come into that sacred circle, we were talking about this last night on in our Sangha, that you can't let that in that sacred circle. You can't bring those bad habits within people on their spiritual path.
Right. So those kind of anarthas that are arising from our previous bad activities, negative activities, they're going to be painful anarthas, but then there are also anarthas arising from previous pious activity, previous good behavior, good karma.
Yeah, explain that one. That's a tricky one. It's like, wait, that's an unwanted thing. If I've done something good in the past, why is that bad?
Yeah, actually it is, because the good behavior isn't the problem, but it's the attachment to the result of that good behavior. If through good behavior I get pleasant things coming into my life, and I become attached to those pleasant things, it may be wealth, right? It may be that I'm born in a beautiful body and I become attached to my own beauty or strength.
Yeah, I know that.
Right? I mean, I struggle with that every day. Right?
Struggle. That's my struggle today.
That's a major obstacle. So whether it's it can manifest in so many ways, but those things can keep us very much bound to materialistic thought.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
So there's anarthas arising from previous negative behavior. There's anarthas that arise from previous good behavior, previous pious behavior. Those are 2. The third one is anarthas that arise from imperfectly performed bhakti. Now these are getting more subtle, right? Yeah, and there's analogies that are commonly used, or metaphors that are commonly used to describe this process. And sometimes it's like a garden, right? Like there's a plant that you're trying to water and protect and watch it grow until it finally becomes fully mature and offers the fruits of love of God, so that metaphor can be used to help understand this anartha, that just like if you've got a little garden and you've got a plant that you're cultivating, right, and that's the plant of pure love of God, and when the sunlight and the water and the nourishment that you're giving to that seed, it's also nourishing other seeds that are around it, right? So like if one is advancing in bhakti, say they're becoming much more deep in their realizations and what they share with others, it's becoming clear to people that this person is like, they're getting somewhere, right? And people are starting to maybe you're getting some fame, maybe people are offering you wealth. You know. Okay. Fame didn't interest you that much. Wealth, you perked up. Okay. So you know, prestige. You know. Yeah. These subtler things, you know, they can grow along with that little sprout of pure love of God that's growing, you know, that bhakti creeper. And you know, the thing is, gardeners understand this kind of thing, that when the weeds are growing, they draw energy and sometimes they even starve the plant that you're trying to grow, right? And so this is you know, this becomes real essential to understand, you know, are there any weeds that are being watered through my practice of bhakti that I need to be very careful about? And then the fourth type of anartha, and this is the one that I think, especially you, Raghunath, emphasize a lot on our daily podcast, is anarthas, unwanted things in the heart, in the mind, that arise from offenses in devotional service, that arise from, you know, the offenses that we commit when we're practicing bhakti, right? Offenses to, you know, others, especially offenses to God. You know, it's we sometime a couple months back or something, we went through the 10 offenses of the holy name, and I kind of
that was a good day.
Presented them in a positive light rather than a negative light. But the idea is like, again, the fundamental practice in bhakti yoga is this meditation on the names of God. So the faith is there that these names, these mantras, they have tremendous transformational power. But what it requires, and this is what yoga is all about, it requires that your mind become deeply absorbed in it. And our problem is that we have a very hard time deeply absorbing our mind in it, right? Our mind becomes absorbed in other things quite easily, right? The murder mysteries and things like that, right? They can suck us right in. And when we sit down to chant that name, the mind's totally distracted. It's like if the mind is a sponge, you can't just drip a little, here's a drop of water. It's got to go fully in and become completely, you know, saturated. Somehow our mind has become saturated in these, you know, in these mantras. And we have a really hard time doing that. True?
Yeah, you know, I was using the example of last night we were having the same conversation about how if a parent has little children, and the children sometimes act a little crazy, a little loud, you know, for a parent to get criticized, for an adult to get criticized, you don't take it so seriously. Someone got some issues with me, but if someone starts to offend the child, like, you know, nowadays, in the old days when I was growing up, you could actually correct. Do you remember when you used to like get corrected by other adults? Like even in like the supermarket or a department store, some manager would be like, "Hey, stop playing with that kid." You can't do that anymore. You can't correct someone's child. But if someone was to correct my child, I get so like mother bear or father bear and like angry. And the idea is that as practicing spiritualists, people can offend us. And we just say, we take no offense. Oh, no problem. I'm sorry. And so the people practicing bhakti, we don't get offended. We train ourselves not to be offended. What happens is it's Lord Vishnu gets offended when we offend devotees. The devotees aren't going to take offense. They're above that. It's by the way, and if you do get offended, you should understand you're acting outside of devotional service. You know, because we don't take offense. We tolerate. But Lord Vishnu gets very offended. And what'll happen to the person, the practicing devotee who's offensive, it's like you get completely covered over immediately. Krishna takes away your taste for chanting that holy name. You just lose taste for it. And you start becoming more and more attracted to bad habits. The things that those things that you really want, you can no longer have. You become back in illusion, and Krishna sort of covers you, and then you start thinking Maya is actually a great thing. So it's such an about face we do in our spiritual life, and it's almost got nothing to do with the person that you're offending. And we just went over this whole thing about Vidura. Vidura wasn't offended by Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana. It was just like, this is a good thing. I guess Krishna has another plan for me. But Lord Vishnu gets offended when you offend the great souls, and it wreaks havoc on our spiritual life. So that yeah, anartas caused. What is it? Anartas caused by your offenses in bhakti.
Which arise, yeah. Well, that one is anarthas arising from offenses in one's practice of bhakti.
Offenses, but that's the fourth one.
Yeah, that's the fourth one.
Yeah.
Those are really heavily emphasized, as being important to avoid. When you enter into yeah.
I'm sorry, these are great, Kaustubha.
Well, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is so brilliant. Like he analyzes that the first one, the anarthas that are arising from our previous negative karma, our previous negative behavior. Those anarthas are the kleshas, the same exact kleshas that you find in
The Yoga Sutras.
In the Yoga Sutras: avidya, ignorance; asmita, false ego or identification with the body; raga, material attachment; dvesha, material aversion; and abhinavesha, which is one's acquired nature, absorption in bodily existence, which sometimes it's defined as fear of death or clinging to life.
I think these are like the clinical definitions of dented canness. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Ignorance, false ego, attachment, hatred, and absorption in bodily existence. Like it's almost like, yep, that's what we all got growing up in this world, and that's what we got. And most of us never even step out to realize like these are bad things. Some people, like when their ego gets hurt, they figure out, well, now I got to like puff up my ego again. My ego's a little injured. So attachment, that's a good thing to be attached, So yeah, it's when you get to that point, and perhaps it's either from those things sort of grinding your face on the concrete, or by the association of a spiritually minded person, we realize, I don't want that ignorance. That false ego is causing me pain. My absorption in my bodily existence, including my fear of death, it's making me neurotic, or it's making me self-obsessed or self-absorbed. It's when we start to realize these aren't good things I want to change.
These are the causes of material suffering.
These are my causes of pain.
Yeah.
And that's when spiritual information starts to be like, yes. And what it does is meeting those holy people or hearing those holy literature is it gives us access point out of this cycle of birth and death, an access point, a little like secret, they have some of the houses, like there's a secret spot on the wall. You hit it like a secret bookcase and you spin around. So we're in this like for lifetimes of birth and death and like this figure eight that we can't get out of. And then out of some causeless mercies, out of incredible good fortune, we meet somebody who's free from that, or we hear some wisdom literature that gives us an access point out, and we embrace that tightly. Instead of thinking, oh, that's novel, that's interesting, we actually embrace it tightly, and we get out of that cycle. It's actually one in a billion, one in a trillion,
Yeah, it's if one takes up bhajana kriya, if one says, okay, you know what, I'm going to regulate my life. I'm going to cease to behave in negative ways, right? And I'm going to take up this daily practice and regulate it. Those kleshas, they can kind of like, fall by the wayside relatively quickly, but those, the very, what we really need to guard against, is these offenses, right? They're so destructive. And that's why, I appreciate so much how you're always saying, about criticizing, about, offending, about feeling offended. Those
I'm warning myself, Prabhu.
Yeah, well,
I'm warning myself from my previous birth. I'm taking from my previous poor activities in a previous lifetime. I'm taking them in this lifetime, and I'm in great fear of bringing them into sacred circles.
Right. Well, that fear is a very healthy fear. That's where he gets. You see, it's like this. These metaphors, they're really helpful. Like, say we have the metaphor of like this garden, or sometimes the metaphor uses like the heart is like a temple, the mind or the heart is like a temple. Right. And if, people, people will criticize, oh, this temple stuff, what's that all about? It's really spiritual. This is like an internal thing. It's not about some building made out of bricks and so on. Well, but the point is, it's like the external The whole point to the external is the effect they can have on the internal. So if you conceive, if you spend time daily in a temple, and you know, the cleanliness of the temple, the purity of the temple, and so on, you know, this how sanctified that space is. It helps you understand, apply it internally, how sacred, how pristine, how pure my mind and heart have to become internally. And so the great teachers of Bhakti Yoga, they'll use that metaphor, like my heart, my mind, or my heart is like a temple. And just like a temple, it's cleansed daily. It's cleansed, you know, with great seriousness and care, because I want to place the form of the Lord in that temple, in that sanctum sanctorium, in that most sacred of all places. So whether it's a garden or whether it's a temple, the idea is that these anarthas, they become, for the serious Bhakti Yoga practitioner, you know, it's great. Someone learns a little bit about Bhakti. Oh, the kirtan, I'm in the bhav. This is great. You know, it's like, that's all fine. That's great. But the seriousness with which, you know, one really has to take the process to actually really experience it, to really reconnect with God and to experience real bhav, you know, like, you know, not in a, you know.
Are you saying I'm not in my bhav?
No, you or you're
got my bhav going.
Yeah, but to really experience what's you know, what the sages, you know, speak of when they call bhava, which is what Uddhava is experiencing here. That when he hears the name of Krishna, the hairs stand on end, the voice falters, tears fall from the eyes, you know, the body trembles, one becomes stunned.
That's on my bucket list. That's on my bucket list.
That's my point.
That's the real bucket list.
That's the
bucket.
That is the bucket list that the great acharyas, the great teachers, pray for. When will the day come when I chant Krishna's name, my voice is so choked up because I'm feeling such deep emotion, the tears will be pouring from my eyes? That's the bucket list. I like that, rather.
Hey, I'm going to put this out there today. You guys, everybody listening to this, if you have a spiritual bucket list, it might be a holy place. It might be all these things we mentioned today. But what's on your spiritual bucket list? You can DM me at Raghunath Yogi. I'll read it tomorrow. Tell me what your spiritual, maybe it's chanting 60 rounds. Maybe it's like learning a song so you can just sing it wherever you go, learning some mantras or some prayers. What's on your spiritual bucket list? DM me at Raghunath Yogi on Instagram. Thanks to everybody for joining us. Oh, our little retreat here is winding up.
Is it?
I always love that. 9 processes. No, it was what do we call these again?
Stages.
The 9 stages of Bhakti Yoga. It was a great thing to discuss. Now we just had this satsang. Now we have a whole second satsang and kirtan morning songs, yoga class. If you'd like to join us on a yoga class, both me and Parmananda are teaching every day. Parmananda's on today at supersoulyoga.com. You can sign up there. Parmananda will be teaching today. And thanks everybody for joining us. We got a crew here. We're going to show you around. Everybody, come on, Parmananda, do a dance for them.
When do the rapas come out?
When do the arepas? Oh my God, arepas. I've never had arepas. Arepas like the best food you ever had. It's like a cornmeal, gluten-free pancake, and they make it sweet. They make it salty. They make it for breakfast. I've been trying to skip breakfast, but the hot arepas are at breakfast time, and I can't. I'm getting too attached.
Has Shamsundari brought her grandmother's?
I'm attached to their devotion, but I think it's just the food.
Has Shamsundari brought like the grandmother's arepas or something? Like there's some super high quality ones that she was like.
It's like next level stuff, people here. Okay, let's get this dance party going. Come on, 6 a.m. What are we doing?
Who we got, Mara?
Thanks, everybody, joining us today. We had a big group, over 100 today on Zoom. If you want to join us on Zoom, email Mara, wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com, and she will send you the secret codes to get on and join our little club.